Right. Hey everybody, coming to check out the Spyrothon Marathon. This is a great event so far, and it's going to be some good stuff coming up later on. We've got a very exciting interview for you guys right now with the what I'm going to call the Spyro historian, HWD. We're just gonna talk a little bit about some of the different things that he has done for the community, including finding different prototypes and different basically historical documents that sort of give us a timeline of how these games were created. It's super cool stuff, and you guys will really enjoy some of the stuff that he has to say. So it's really good to have you here. I'm really excited to talk to you about this stuff.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I've never um, heard anyone refer to me as like a Spyro historian before, but I think that sums it up quite well, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't let you know if that was okay ahead of time, but I thought about it this morning and I was like, this is perfect. What had originally gotten you into Spyro, glitch hunting and prototypes in particular?
So I guess I've always had like a bit of a fascination with that kind of thing. I suppose it's because um, the Spyro games were like my favorite games when I was growing up. Um, I played them like really, really excessively. So when I found out years later, oh, well, these games that you've played inside and out, there's actually like loads more to them. I was like, what? There's like so much more there. And I guess exploring what some of the known things were, like the Dino Mines arena and all the nonsense with like the whirlwind in Midnight Mountain. Um, I guess I was a bit like, like there's all this stuff, but like, what if there's more? Because there's
Mhm.
got to be like a lot more where this stuff's come from. And and around that time, I'd also been exploring some of the Sonic 2 prototypes as well. Like some of my first videos that I did on my channel were messing around in some of the Sonic 2 prototypes. People still comment on those like ones, even though like really really poorly made Windows Movie Maker
Oh,
videos.
yeah.
Um, but like yeah, I found those really interesting as well because Sonic 2 was another game which I really enjoyed when I was younger, and finding out years later that there were a whole bunch of levels from that game which didn't make it into the final game was like, you know, oh, that one of my favorite games has so much more to it. And I guess there's like this really weird link between
Mhm.
Sonic 2 and Spyro in that one of the famous cut levels from Sonic 2, Hidden Palace Zone, um, was actually designed by Craig Stitt, who later went to work on the Spyro games and uh, infamously uh, he designed Midnight Mountain Home. And when he went on holiday just before the game release, they redesigned the level so that they moved where Super Bonus Round Portal was. So like things getting cut from the game kind of happened like twice to him, and I find that really like bizarre.
Oh, that's just that's rough. But it provide yeah, that's really cool with the history. So was that something that you had found like quite a while after? Like it was just something that um you knew of both of the things, then you put the pieces together, or did you
Yeah,
know? Yeah, that's crazy.
like literally, it was like a few months ago. I think I put two and two together, and I was like, oh, hang on a minute,
Oh
like
my
this has all just been kind of weirdly connected this whole time.
God. Oh man. I wonder if there's any other games out there that he's just gotten the short end of the stick.
There's got to be. I think he worked on
Yeah.
a bunch of games for Sega.
Mm,
So,
hmm.
in fact, he's actually been cut it. He's been posting some footage of like games that didn't get released, and actually the if you've seen the footage of like a color test for Spyro,
Mm,
um,
hmm.
he actually he uploaded that to his YouTube channel um,
Okay.
quite recently. So he's got like a bit of an archive of things which people never saw. So he's been uploading those.
I I absolutely love when they're able to kind of give that information out and just share it because I feel like a lot of that's been happening recently, and I'm sure you are familiar. And it just adds so much to these games that we love.
Yeah, and I think Spyro is kind of like particularly susceptible to that as well because it seems like all the developers who who aren't working at Insomniac or on games necessarily anymore, they're still like really passionate about these games. They're like a really important part of their lives,
Mhm.
and so it's really nice not only seeing their kind of passion in sharing this content, but also seeing their passion in when other people kind of share this content as well.
So what brought you into prototype research itself for Spyro? What interests you most about it?
Yeah, so I guess you know, working on that groundwork of just being really interested in the weird quirks that this game has and some of the cut content,
Mhm.
I started looking into the demo versions a bit more. And um, for those that aren't aware, the demo builds of like PlayStation games were like pretty much always built from like an earlier version of the source code. So they would be kind of like prototypes in and of themselves, but stripped down versions that don't have everything. But even if they don't have like most of the game, they still tend to have quite a lot of stuff which they don't want to show you. And so when I started finding this out and I started trying to strip apart all of these different demo builds and also I tried like identifying how many different demo builds there were and the order that they fell in, the general kind of timeline, because it was kind of stuff that no one had documented particularly well. Um, when I started doing that stuff, I just found that I could just keep digging deeper and deeper, and there was just more and more to find, and it just kind of took over my life a little bit, and so it became like something which I'd spend like hours and hours doing, and I just enjoyed every moment of it.
Mhm. How do you like? Could you go maybe a little bit into your process about how you sort of find that sort of first thing that leads you into that kind of wealth of knowledge?
Yeah, so I guess it's a bit tricky in that
Mhm.
there's not necessarily like a surefire process that someone can take to go down that kind of route. But I guess in my case, it was just helpful that Spyro was a game that I've played for a long time and I really enjoy. And it just happened that there was quite a lot of knowledge there which people didn't document particularly well. And so when I started with not just demo builds, but also like pre-release materials, so I would like go through websites on like the web archive and
Mhm.
magazines, which are also like on the web archive, really useful resource for like anyone that wants to, uh, you know, who wants to get into like researching a game. You might not have too much success with Spyro because I think it quite a lot of it's sort of been done by this point, but
Mhm.
like it does always help. There's like things have been found just by random people going, you know what, I'm going to search for something, and they find something which no one's found before.
Yeah,
Like
there's like a promotional photo that at the time was just, to show the game a little bit, but when you look back at it, it's something that's crazy that's like completely different or at least adjusted a little bit, some interesting tidbit from the game.
right, yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Like there's so many of those out there,
Mhm.
and one of the things that a person can do to try and get into this stuff is try and find them, like looking through magazines and websites and things, and finding what all of these different screenshots and videos that were used in early development were, and from there, what I did at least is I tried to like build up a timeline of each of the game's developments.
Mhm.
Um, so if there were like a bunch of screenshots which appear maybe in like loads of different magazines, I can go, oh, well, that's just probably like a generic press bundle that they would send out to a bunch of people, and like maybe they're probably all like the same build of the game, and like some evidence in the photos might suggest that as well. And so I'd
Oh
like
yeah.
add that to my timeline. And then I go, oh, well, there's like demo builds, add those to my timeline. And there's also like a few cases where like websites would report on like unique builds, where they'd actually like received like a version of the game and reported on it. And then that would go in the timeline as well. And I'd like compare all the different differences and it gives you like a really like solid picture of like the game's whole development.
That's I think documenting something like that is it's definitely a heavy task, but I think having that sort of thing really is valuable to anybody that's a fan of the game, and that's really awesome. Do you happen to have some like press kits or something that um particularly is like some of your favorite stuff or something that you've really liked that you've dug up over the years?
Yeah, so in terms of like one of my favorite things I've dug up, I think um the the GameSpot Spyro 3 video. So I kind of can't like claim this is all my discovery because it wasn't at all.
Mhm.
But I'd noticed that early versions of the GameSpot website had a bunch of videos for Spyro 3, and none of the videos had actually been archived. So
Huh?
like there's nothing about them on the web archive at all, just the links to those pages. And like you can go on the pages, but the embedded video is just it's not there.
Right.
And there's like a little description for each one as well, kind of generic stuff like, "Oh, this is a video where we're playing as this character," and like when I would look on the most recent version of the website or anything that came after 2014, because I think I was getting into the pre-release materials around like 2016, so I was a couple of years late for this. But around 2014, four of the videos vanished, and the only one that was left just doesn't work.
Hmm.
And so for the longest time, I was like, this video just doesn't load. I tried researching what was happening there, and I found some instances of people saying, "Oh yeah, old videos just don't work anymore because they're not compatible with the new version of the video viewer that they've got on their website or something like that."
Yeah.
And I kept asking about this, and eventually someone just said, "Oh no, you can just get the videos off of like the GameSpot API. Like you can just get the file directly."
It's a good.
So yeah, like that was just like the little thing that I needed. So I downloaded the video. I had to like it was like in FLV format, which a lot of video players don't really like viewing. So I had to get like VLC media player or something.
Mhm.
Um, And I just remember actually seeing the video for the first time and think it was like 2018 by this point. So it had been a couple I'd known that there was like a video there for a couple years, but kind of assumed that it was just broken and would never be viewed. And so I was actually seeing this thing for the first time. Um, and one of the things that I very, very quickly noticed was like it uses this early version of Sergeant Bird's theme. Um,
Oh.
so this was something that I'd found in some previous videos I'd also dug up some IGN videos, which is another one of the things that I'm really happy to have like documented because they were completely underdocumented as well.
Yeah.
And in those videos, you also heard this theme, but you only heard like a 10-second snippet, and so the rest of the track was like completely like we don't know what it sounded like. And it
Yeah.
turned out when listening to this GameSpot video, I was just watching it, looking for the differences, and then it like hit me this like really loud like guitar uh riff on top of what I was, on top of like what I was expecting. It took a few seconds to like realize, oh no, that's actually like part of the track. I'm not just like hearing that from somewhere else. This theme
Yeah.
is like it's so different that it's got this really, really like heavy guitar riff on top of it, and I'd like it better than the final version.
Really? So did
Yeah,
it sound like it was something by Stuart Copeland or something that was like kind of thrown in?
I think it was later found that it was like a one of the samples that he used.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
It was like I
Yeah.
think it was like a guitar sample that he did like a melody or something over the top.
Yeah, because I remember I actually was looking into this recently. It was it was one of the demo videos just on one of the PlayStation 1 demo discs for Spyro 1. Just to base it wasn't the game itself, it just showed you some gameplay. And they used a song that was distinctly not the style of the actual music that ended up being in the game, and it definitely threw me off in that same sort of way.
Yeah, I think I know which
Yeah, I'm blank.
which one you're talking about. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
I th-
blanking on it. I can't remember if it was one of the ones that there was like a series that Sony did where they would do like a pack of like 8 or so demos. I can't remember if it was that or if it was like something else. Um,
what was it? Sparrow 3,
Spyro 1.
Sparrow 1.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, I know which one you mean. Yeah,
Mhm.
there's an early trailer of Spyro 1 where like the dragons have like a gold statue
Mhm.
and there's like a green gem in the heads up display. Um, they use like some really weird music over the top of that just does not fit. And actually, this wasn't my discovery; it's someone else's. So credit to Vindico for this. It turns out like if you get rid of the music by using if you find the what the actual music track is and like use like phase inversion to get rid of the music, you can hear what the tracks actually used in game are, and like they still what we can hear of them still sounds like the final game pretty much.
Hmm.
Um, but they're just not like in the right place at all. The tracks are just all over the place,
Uh,
and that's like it's like true for the prototypes that have released as well. But for this one, it's like there's even fewer tracks, and so like Town Square uses the Magic Crafters theme, which is really weird.
yeah, I that doesn't fit at all.
No, it's really weird.
Yeah, I think one of the first things, and this is kind of off on a little bit of a tangent, but one of the first things I remember really loving as a kid was there's that interview with Stuart Copeland talking about him designing the music for the first game. And I had that on a demo disc, and I would replay it constantly, just like look at, like see the game in this different sort of format that that eventually grew into the game. That's one of my favorite of all time. I don't know if you've seen that one or not.
Yeah, no, I really like that interview, and
Mhm.
actually, if you, I remember I think like a few weeks ago, I was rewatching that, and I was watching the monitor that he had up really closely because I think um like the version of the game in that monitor that you like very briefly see matches one of the release prototypes. So it
Oh,
was like,
okay.
oh, like he probably had this version.
Oh, that's really cool to actually be able to pinpoint that specifically.
Yeah,
That's
and
fantastic.
I think I don't know if he mentioned it in that interview or some other time, but he apparently was given like cheat codes from
Yeah,
Insomniac about how to skip through the levels, and like yeah, those have been discovered in the prototypes as well. There's like level
yeah,
skip cheats and things.
yeah. Do you have? You're free to talk about any little interesting things regarding like dev menus and cheats if you'd like.
Oh yeah, so in terms of like dev menus, there's not really like anything that I know of, although there are like some uh pre-release builds of Spyro 2 and 3, which seem to have like a debug counter kind of display, like when you have like debug mode on sometimes
Hmm.
in games you'll have like a counter that says a bunch of like the variables.
Yeah.
Um, there's like a build of Spyro 2 which seems to include like your coordinates on the pause menu. It's like a review build, I think. I think it's like in one of the screenshots in the game's like instruction manual.
Really.
Yeah, like look really closely. There's like some coordinates there for some reason.
We'll
Um,
we'll have to see if we can actually find that to throw up
yeah,
on the.
yeah,
That'd be really cool.
I've got like a few um images of those. But there's a couple builds of Spyro 3 as well, where they had like a count a few counters in the top right. And I found like a whole bunch of magazines and things which all had this build or I think there's like a couple builds which are like it. Um and looked at all of the digits that they had and tried to compare it with stuff that I knew from in-game. And I
Hmm.
kind of eventually realized that I think it's just like for testing the difficulty because
Oh.
it has the same kind of like it takes the same values that the difficulty value takes,
Hmm.
which are like multiples of 5, going from like -40 to 30, I think, or -40 to +30.
Hmm.
And so that was like really weird. Like, oh, this is just like some display they had probably to test that the difficulty was scaling uh, correctly. I can show some images of those versions as well. One of the screenshots is very weird, in that for quite a while during development, the early builds of Spyro 3 used Spyro 2's title screen,
Hmm.
but without the. It looks like it doesn't have the logo. So there's just this really weird screenshot of like in a Spyro 3 preview um of Spyro standing in Skelos Badlands with like some numbers in the top right. And they just went, yeah, that screenshot's fine.
Yeah,
Put that
that's
in the
gonna work.
magazine.
See, I would have been racking my brain if I would have seen that as a kid, because I remember I would look through instruction manuals of all the games that I had all the time, and there would be little things at times where you could tell it was clearly like they would pull a screen from something when they were working on a prototype and decided that was a good idea to throw in that magazine or the instruction manual even at times, and it wouldn't match up with what I would experience in the game, and I'd be like, is there something I'm missing here, or do I need to dive deeper in this? I would do that all the time, so it's
Yeah. Yeah, like just recently I bought the Prima guides for Spyro 1, 2, and 3.
oh
You know,
yeah, that'd be so cool.
so I was looking through the screenshots of those, basically trying to figure out like they must have used like early versions of the game or like
Hmm.
late review builds or something. And
Hmm.
like all of the Spyro 2 screenshots still have Spyro 1 Sparks model in them. So
Hmm.
they must have changed that really, really late. And
Yeah.
like the Spyro 3 screenshots, like mostly looks like the final game, but the very last screenshot they put in has the like a screenshot of like the last egg you get, but it has like completely the wrong name. It's like called Zan Jaina instead of Yin Yang. I think it's like after the DC Wonder twins or something.
Oh.
Um, and like the surrounding text around it is like, yes, once you've done all this stuff, you get yin yang, and it's just the screenshots like, no, it's Zanjana.
Yeah, because I mean, they I mean that's how it would work, right? They'd want to get the Prima guide basically out at the same time the game would come out, so they'd probably just throw them all this sort of press release or press kit stuff that might not be super relevant, but they still need to have the game be accurate at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I guess they probably had like the final game and then like either lots of screenshots or like a very like a few very late builds maybe where they'd
Probably
like
some lead builds, yeah.
yeah, so that they could like start writing it in advance and then just use like the final game as like a way of verifying everything, I guess.
I imagine with the ambiguity that there are some situations where you have to do, you probably have some pretty interesting stories on how you've had to try and track some information down that you knew was there. Do you have anything like that that you could share?
Yeah, I feel like quite a lot of the time it's just like going on loads of like wild goose chases, and there tends to be quite a lot of disappointment, and you have to keep your expectations a low, really really low quite a lot of the time. But
Hmm.
you know when I first was really close to getting this June 15th prototype, um, that was definitely like a really weird point because nothing like that had really happened to me before, and at this point, very very few Spyro prototypes were known,
Hmm.
and that's still the case really. So you know, managing to happen upon something like this and actually getting the opportunity uh, to potentially obtain it, um, that was like huge. And so it was really a question of like how willing am I to try and get this stuff. And fortunately for me, the seller, he didn't really want to ship things abroad,
Hmm.
um, or even like he didn't want to send me it in the post. He wanted me to do the transaction in person. He could give me the disc in person. It would all be like completely safe. Um, and luckily for me, he only lives like I think it was about 100 miles away or something. So it was like a kind of like a really it was a really short drive. Um, if it was even 100 miles. I think it was less than that. Um,
Quite
but
lucky.
yeah, yeah, it was really lucky. So, I don't drive, so I had to get one of my parents to drive me down there. I was like, "Can you, like, drive me down to some guy in this town and, let me pay huge sums of money for a Spyro disc?" And they were like, "Yeah, I guess." Um, so yeah, no, my dad drove me down there. The seller was like sending me messages like, "Oh yeah, I've got the PlayStation 2 set up. It's in the kitchen." And I went in his house and went in his kitchen, and he just had this. I don't know why he had like a PlayStation set up in his kitchen, but he had this PS2 and the TV, and the disc was ready to go. And I remember playing the game, thinking it was just going to be the same as one of the unreleased prototypes, the LX Shadow prototype, because I've been told that it was the same month as that one at least. So oh, okay, so it's probably that one. That'd be cool. Finally getting the opportunity to obtain and release this thing, and I remember playing through Stone Hill, and I got to the end of the level, and uh, I looked at like the vortex to leave the level, and there was something very different about it, and I was like, "Oh, this isn't the same build at all. This is an earlier one. Oh my
Wow.
god!" And it was just, you know, having this realization that there could be like so much different in this. I have no idea like the
Mhm.
extent to which this is different.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
it was like something entirely new. I wasn't aware of this build at all. And actually, like after I obtained it, I remember looking through a bunch of like pre-release materials and things and being like, "Well, look, there it is! It's there! It's that one
Mhm.
there! That screenshot! I just never noticed it before." Um,
It's totally worth it then.
yeah,
The whole effort that you took really kind of changed everything.
yeah, yeah, definitely. The drive back was like especially anxious, and
Mhm.
dumping the disk and uh, loading it up on my computer and playing through the differences. And
Mhm.
I just remember skipping like really to the end of the game quite quickly just to see like what the levels at the end of the game like, because they've got to be quite different. And it was all like a really nice surprise seeing how wild those differences were. And I started posting like teasers about it on a few different Discord channels as well, like holding the disc up with like the name
Yeah.
except for the S, like, covered, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, what is that?"
Oh, that's so cool. I think I've seen I think on the build page for it, I think the picture of the disc is on there if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
it's
think.
it's it's very, very pink. It's, like, more
Yep.
pink in real life than it is in that photo.
Oh, no way. Um, yeah, so could you talk a little bit about some kind of information that you can gather from these prototypes and early builds of sort of stuff that we see in like press releases and stuff like that?
Yeah, so, like, one of the really useful things about, um, a lot of the early builds is that there's not just the stuff which is facing the player, but there's always, like, hidden bits of nuggets of information like underneath, whether it's
Mhm.
like unused content or even just like weird leftovers and things.
Sure.
Like for example, if you look in one of the demo versions, the earliest demo of Spyro 1, um, you can find this array of values which tells you like how many gems are in each of the worlds. So it would have been used in the inventory. So you can get like, even though there's only like 3 levels in that demo, you can get an idea of how many gems are in every single other world. And the really weird thing is, it doesn't stop at 6 worlds, it stops at 7. There's 7 different worlds in that version of the game. And I think it was probably a world which was probably planned around this point, but cut shortly
Yeah.
afterwards, which was actually mentioned in, as you said, a press kit. uh, so one of the press kits um, for the game has this document on it, which uh, I guess it was, like, probably like a design document or something. It must have been from very early development. They probably had all of these ideas, but just hadn't implemented, like, any of them yet by this point. Um, and it actually describes a seventh world called the Aquifer world. So so according to this, the kind of architecture of this world would have been like structures made of crystal domes and arches.
Hmm.
Most of the structures have a spherical or circular theme. It's dominated by water. There's like open seas, raging rivers, and chasms. Uh, the idea was that like this is where Spyro would have learned to swim at one point in
Oh,
development,
okay.
and that would have like unlocked a bunch of different places in other worlds as well. And
Also, I
actually,
have to imagine that, that, I mean, well, obviously that got cut, but they took some of those concepts into Spyro 2, as you said, learn an ability and then you can apply that to levels you learned
yeah,
previously.
in fact, yeah, like I think Craig Stitt, whenever he's prompted about things that were cut from the Sparrow games, he always mentions the Aquifers, dragons, and I'm pretty sure that the way that he's worded it before was like, yeah, this was one of those ideas that we had for Sparrow One and we wanted to do, but we couldn't. So it ended up being in Sparrow Two instead. So I guess they carried over some of those ideas.
That is so cool because, yeah, that example right there is taking a demo and finding this array that seeming like if you didn't take the time to really look into it is sort of meaningless. But if you look into it further, you find this whole wealth of knowledge that allows you to kind of put a timeline to, hey, when was this demo out? Like, when was this like the what build was this basically? And you learn more about the history of where the game was at that point in time. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, like even from like a really relatively small piece of information, there's a whole layer of like interpretation to it. Like, what we've got this information, what do we do with it? How do we understand it? And once you've got like all of those different layers of like pre-release knowledge and things the developers have said and images and early versions of the game and all that, you can kind of pull it together to build like a picture.
Sure. So, do you have any advice for somebody that might want to start doing this as well?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say if you want to get into researching prototypes and that sort of thing, I would probably start on the end of investigating like if the game has any demo builds that were like made public, or even if it has any like already released prototypes. That's sometimes games get released, or like prototypes get released, and they kind of like fall under the radar. So if it's a game that you're interested in, you find out, oh, it's actually got like a release prototype already. Investigating those differences and documenting them is a good idea, I think. And
Mm.
on top of that, investigating the pre-release materials like magazines and websites and things, building a picture of like the development timeline and doing your own kind of like research and documentation. I think it's really useful for getting your head around how these things worked and like what was going on behind the scenes and making a sort of name for yourself as well as someone that's like interested in that stuff. And
Hmm.
then, where that can go from there, to potentially, like, finding new, unreleased prototypes as well. It's a bit of a leap, and there's not really, necessarily, like, a really clear way to, look for these kind of things.
Sure.
Um, but it's something you kind of pick up, I guess, in a sense,
Yeah.
um, while you're doing all of this kind of research.
Do you have anything else exciting kind of coming up?
Nothing that I can talk about yet.
Hmm.
There's things happening, there's things coming up, but nothing that I can, uh, divulge as of yet.
Sure. If people were interested in sort of following anything that does come up, do you have sorts of like locations where you kind of keep all of this?
Yeah, so, I think pretty much everything, that I find goes on my YouTube channel. So that's hwd45. Um, Some of it doesn't go on the YouTube channel if it's not particularly significant. I tend to put everything that I find on the cutting room floor though. So if you're aware of tcrf.net, I try and
Mhm.
put quite a lot of my findings on there as well.
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with it until the recent sort of prototypes that had come out from you. Um, but there's definitely a lot of stuff. I need to go through it a little bit more because there's a lot there.
Yeah, I've kind of neglected like the Sparrow 2 pages a little bit, but the Sparrow
Mhm.
1 and 3 pages are quite solid, I think.
Well, cool. So, as a lot of our viewers are excited to see, there's going to be a showcase of the Dream prototype that you had recently released, uh, shown by Farnia, and you'll be co-commentating. Is there anything, without revealing too much, that people should be excited to see for that?
Yeah, so this is it's a version of the game from about 2 months before the final game. So there's quite a few bits. Well, there's some bits which are relatively finalized, but there's quite a lot of really weird differences throughout. So we're talking things like loads of different gem locations are different. The home world requirements, like the things you need to get to each of the worlds, are different. There's a few completely unfinished levels. Um, some change mechanics and things. So yeah, it's all interesting stuff.
Yeah. I mean, you said 2 months, right? So I don't know. That's still a lot of time for different things to change. So I
Yeah.
think people will be really interested to see all these little differences that eventually um, came to be the game that we know today. So that's going to be really cool to see all of that stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially because Insomniac were kind of famous for working really, really quickly. So if you
Mm.
imagine 2 months and working quickly, it's quite a lot
It's
of differences.
well, that's fascinating to me as well, just because from what I know of them working at that time, I mean, they were doing a lot of different things that kind of weren't really done in video games at that time. Um, so to see them be able to do that and work quickly and basically create a series that we love is pretty amazing.
Yeah, definitely. It's really impressive.
Well, thank you so much, HWD, for talking with me today. It was very enlightening. There was so many different things that I discovered, and I've been playing this game constantly for the last 6 years. So super awesome stuff. We really look forward to seeing more of that explanation with the prototype showcase with Farnia a little bit later in the marathon.
Yeah, no, I've really enjoyed being here and taking the opportunity to just talk at length about Spyro.
Yep. So yeah, if anybody is interested to hear more of this, like I said, there will be a prototype showcase with HWD here as well as Farnia, and they will be showcasing one of the prototypes that has come out recently, and there'll be some really cool stuff there as well. So be sure to tune into that.